Irashaimase. Hello and welcome to Fataris' Kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Fataris. It's time once again for Shoot 'em Up Saturday, and on the menu this week we have RPM, Road Punk Mayhem, a post-apocalyptic bullet hell. What kind of taste will it have? Let's get cooking and find out. From developer Panda Indie Studio, RPM released for the PC, the Xbox, the PlayStation 4 and 5, and the Switch in July of 2024. So this is a vertical scrolling bullet hell that has a fairly fun warp bomb mechanic, but overall this title's been on the underwhelming side for me personally, especially in the sound front design. It does have a low price point though, so if you like what you see here, then maybe it'll be worth your time to check it out. Finding ourselves at the main menu. So there's not a whole lot as far as options are concerned. Things are relatively bare bones that way. There is an online leaderboard. It'll display the top 10 ranks and then your score relative to those. Selecting play takes us to our character select. There's no difficulty settings here. So you've got Casio that we can play as. So his specific mechanics are he has a spread shot and he has the most lives of any of these characters. Then we have Forma, who has a straight shot and only 4 lives, and Gorgonzola, who has a homing shot and the fewest lives. For our purposes, we'll take the game as Casio so we can show it off with a spread shot. This is RPM. So as far as your mechanics are concerned, they're relatively straightforward for a bullet hell. You have your shot button, which if you hold down will give you a laser and also focus movement, so very standard there. And then there is fortunately also a rapid button available, so you can press the rapid button to give you the rapid fire, which for Casio here, as I was mentioning, is the spread shot. But then we also have that unique warp bomb mechanic. So you see the dotted circle that's around our, well, in this case, vehicle. That dotted circle is our range for our warp. After you use it, it will shrink down to nothing, and then after a short period of time it recovers and we'll have our warp range back. Another neat feature about that, if you hold down the warp button, instead you get a bomb in that range, which will clear enemy bullets as well as deal a pretty decent amount of damage. So that whole bomb warp mechanic is pretty neat, but there is a problem with that, is using the warp is just a tap. If you hold it down, you use a bomb, and sometimes, especially when things are getting hot and heavy, I'll find myself holding the button down too long, and because I'm not warping, I end up taking damage because I'm charging up the bomb instead. So there is that as an issue. I kind of wish there were separate buttons. You could just go and use it as a bomb, which you still had to hold down, or just the warp itself. There are actually 3 buttons on the controller that give you that particular bomb mechanic. So that's like there are definitely options there for them to play with that, but as I mentioned, there's no real options when it comes to controls. So that's what we have as far as the base controls for our movement and our attack. We already find ourselves at the first enemy, Aldo, here. So let's talk a little bit about, well, here will actually be a really good point to go and see how the warp mechanic uses, as you do have to use the warp to jump past these circle lasers that they fire out at us. So as far as the mechanics are concerned, it doesn't really show off very well when we're fighting a boss, but as we defeat the boss, or rather as we defeat enemies, you gain combo, or rather you build combo, which is displayed in your top left there, and that combo will ultimately build up to times 16, allowing you to get some really, really high scores if you're able to maintain that combo. It decays relatively slow, so as long as the enemies keep flowing, that's not going to be too much of a problem. There are a few pickups that we have in the game. So the gas can are our 1-ups. You can see those in the top right as far as displaying how many lives we have. There's also, in this stage here, we're introduced to the stopwatch. The stopwatch gives us a full refresh on our warp circle, so it'll allow us to warp even further. And it's used in this stage to good effect to allow you to do quick warps past walls that would otherwise you wouldn't have enough time to recharge your warp gauge to engage that jump. And then there's one more power up which we'll see coming up here shortly, and that's your ammo crate, which increases the power of your weapons. So for Casio, it's a pretty typical spread where you'll gain additional shots as well as slightly more power to the shot once you level it up. As far as Forma and her straight laser just gets stronger. Oh, these chickens are bonus points, by the way. And you get more and more powerful homing missiles with Gorgonzola when you power per shot. And that's basically what we have here as far as RPM, served up for your enjoyment. So as far as what I'm disappointed with, the minus flavors on this one, the biggest one is the sound design. So everything just sounds so quiet with the exception of the chickens in their box when you run over them, but you know, they're worth bonus points, so it's definitely worth your time on that. But other than that, the sound design is just really soft and weak. It just kind of feels like everything is just flopping around because of that. And then next I have some issue with some of the stage design, particularly in this stage that we just got to. Stage 3 has a couple issues where the enemy shots have this white core to them, and the background of the stage is white, so it's easy enough to go and lose yourself to the enemy shots. In addition to that, this stage has a section where you have two relatively difficult, time-consuming mini-bosses to fight back-to-back, and it's the same mini-boss. So I don't know why they decided on that kind of a choice. It honestly kind of takes more time than the whole boss fight for this stage and many others, just to go and take those two versions out. And overall, even though it has a post-apocalyptic setting, I don't really feel that comes across very well. But as far as the plus side is concerned, so initially I wasn't sure about it, but as I've gotten more and more used to it, I've had a lot of fun with this warp mechanic. The only thing I really wished with it is that, like I was saying earlier, that there were a separate button for your warp and your bomb rather than them having tied to the same button. It would have made life a little more streamlined in my mind. And then lastly, although there are some issues with the title, the price point is pretty agreeable, so especially if you like what you see here, then it might be worth going and checking out, especially if you find this price or this game at a discounted price. And with that, we find ourselves at the end of this week's episode of Shoot 'em Up Saturday. As always, I want to thank you so much for joining us. I hope you have a wonderful week, and we look forward to seeing you again next time.